Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's special stream with Patrick Henningsen. I appreciate you all, whether you're watching this conversation on YouTube, on Rumble, and there is a third actually platform today for the first time I am streaming on. It is called Gun Jing Word, and this is a digital platform established in 2022 by Ganjing World Corporation, headquartered in Middletown, New York. The platform offers a variety of services, including video sharing, live streaming, and social networking, with a focus on providing family-friendly content. It emphasizes traditional values and aims to create a wholesome digital town square free from violence, pornography, crime, and harmful information. I was approached by the platform and ask if I would like to stream on it. There is no catch there. I'm not getting paid by the platform, but I was promised to be treated fairly, unlike on YouTube, which I'm sure Patrick also knows how the independent journalists, podcasters, activists are being suppressed, and the content is being pushed on the bottom of the algorithm so that you guys do not really listen to some dangerous information that we're going to speak today. So, Patrick, how are you doing?
I'm very well, Kevork. Thanks.
I'm very happy to have you today. You've been covering the Syrian war for a long time, and you know what's happening in the country. But just for the audience, I would like to give a little bit of context about what we're going to speak today. And I published this today on Substack. In the aftermath of the regime change in Damascus, Israel's military launched hundreds of strikes targeting Syria's strategic and deterrent weapons, effectively crippling the Syrian army's capabilities. These operations were carried out under the watchful and seemingly complicit eye of Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, the leader of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or al-Nusra Front. At the time, Jolani justified Israel's actions, arguing that the presence of Iranian and Hezbollah forces in Syria provided a legitimate pretext for the strikes. He even suggested that removing these threats would eliminate Israel's rationale for continued military intervention. Fast forward today, and the situation has taken a troubling turn. Despite the absence of Iranian and Hezbollah forces in Syria, Israel has launched a massive bombardment of Syrian territory and declared a demilitarized zone in the south of Damascus. Israeli officials claim this move is necessary to protect the security of its citizens and safeguard the Druze minority in the As-Sueda governorate, but these justifications ring hollow to many observers, raising questions about Israel's true intentions and the role of Jolani in this unfolding drama. Has Abu Muhammad al-Jolani's mission come to an end, or is he now collaborating with Israel to advance a broader agenda? Some analysts argue that Jolani's initial cooperation with Israel was a tactical move to consolidate power in Syria, but his continued silence in the face of Israeli aggression suggests a deeper alignment. Critics go further, accusing Jolani of being a pawn in a larger geopolitical game, one that aligns with the so-called Greater Israel Project, a controversial concept that envisions the expansion of Israeli territories and control across the region. Israel's declaration of a demilitarized zone in southern Syria, coupled with its ongoing military operations, signals a long-term strategy to establish a buffer zone that extends its influence deep into Syrian territory. This move not only undermines Syrian sovereignty, but also risks further destabilizing the region. For Jolani, the stakes are equally high. If he is indeed collaborating with Israel, he risks alienating his base and losing whatever legitimacy he has left among Syrians who view him as a traitor. So we're going to discuss of course, the broader geopolitical implications of this possible alliance. When you see, Patrick, all this development happening, what does come to mind first? Do you see that Jolani used the support of Israel as a tactical move to reach to power? Or there was a deeper connection and deeper collaboration between both sides in order to bring, let's say, a Takfiri group into power, which naturally would impose threats against existential threats, basically against the religious and ethnic minorities, which would give Israel the perfect pretext to intervene in Syria.
Yeah, I just look at the behavior of patterns and actions by Jolani and HTS and al-Nusra and etc., ISIS even. Just look at the pattern, and the pattern shows consistency. Now, it would be one thing if they took advantage of Israeli air support while they were trying to destabilize Syria for all those years, and took advantage of the United States, bifurcating Syrian airspace and occupying with the Kurdish forces in the northeast of the country. And once they came into power, if they were just merely taking advantage of the shared goals and objectives of overthrowing the quote Assad regime, then you might see a change in behavior once power is achieved in Damascus, but you haven't. So that leads one to conclude, safely conclude, that Jolani, I don't even want to use the new rebranded, his new name, al-Shara, because that is also a PR trick in a way to kind of keep the Western uninformed masses completely aloof as to what's going on in the country. But he's acting in his regime, his junta. By definition, it's a junta, not a government. They took power by force under arms and are comprised of many foreign fighters. So it's a junta. But he's acting as a proxy. His policies align with Israel. His words align with Israel. His actions align with Israel and the United States' own goals. Therefore, he and his regime is by definition a proxy. There's no debate or lateral conversation to spin off this. It's absolutely by definition a proxy. I would say he's as cooperative with Israel and the U.S. and some of these other powers as Zelensky is with the United States and NATO in his proxy war against Russia. So it's not that much different. Now, I've not seen any proof of plenty of opportunities to, completely diverge from the previous course, having territory taken, not just territory, strategic territory. He's put Damascus under threat by allowing Israel to take the high ground. To have artillery, 24-hour artillery barrages now. Israel could dominate not just Damascus, of course, but also Lebanon by taking Mount Hermon and the rest of the Golan Heights and other key areas as well. That's to give up your strategic defense. We're not even talking about the liquidation of the Syrian military assets. Just the positioning is unconscionable. I mean, how can you call yourself a government? So he looks like he is a proxy of the West, proxy of Israel, and whose job it is to give away Syrian territory effectively. And it's not going to end with the Golan Heights or Mount Hermon or the Sueda. No, it goes much further than that.
Patrick, when Israel captured Mount Hermon, they have basically had, let's say, military dominance over Damascus. It is only 21 kilometers away from Damascus, and any American artillery, a howitzer, can fire on Damascus, which means Damascus militarily has fallen, because at the same time, the Jolani's army do not have air defense, do not have now any missiles or rockets to operate against the Israeli occupation of Mount Hermon. Now this is going even further. Israel has waged an incursion inside Syrian territories, and they are moving in Quneitra, in Daraa, and they want to establish a buffer zone. In 67 war, they have occupied the Golan in order to establish a buffer zone with Syria. And now another 60-kilometer deep inside Syrian territories, another buffer zone. So basically the borders of Israel are going to stretch to Damascus. And do you see also, am I being paranoid here? Like in a year or two, Israel can claim that now the threat is coming from Damascus against the newly occupied territories. And now they have to occupy Damascus itself. And this is what Smotrich said. Smotrich said, our greater Israel is from Jerusalem to Damascus, right?
Listen, it's going to be easier for the Israeli forces to roll into Damascus than it was for the Israeli forces under Ariel Sharon to roll into Beirut and have tea on Hamra Street. It's going to be much easier for them. And not only that, Kevork, they can create the pretext very easily themselves. They have the ability. They are arguably, they played a in my opinion and others, they played a role in the early destabilization of Syria, especially in Daraa and some of these areas. There's a lot of corrupting factors. The fact that an Israeli journalist could walk into Syria and
Yes.
film for a major broadcast TV channel of, what used to be sensitive areas and military sites, and all of a sudden, as if by magic, like a week later, those sites are getting bombed by the Israeli military. So he was on a reconnaissance mission, or that's an
Wow.
intelligence operation. And it's not the first time that happened, that exact scenario in the last 2 months. This has also happened previously with coverage, quote, media coverage of sites, that almost giving intelligence and really detailed granular intelligence away for targeting. And so if that's the level of porousness between the new Syria and the Israeli entity next door, anything's possible. They could absolutely collapse. I don't think this government or this putsch government is very strong anyway.
No.
They couldn't defend. And on that front, we're talking about Jolani. He himself, arguably, has never ever fought or faced his quote enemies. The organizations that he has headed have only attacked and killed civilians, other Muslims in Iraq and Syria, lorded over people in Idlib, terrorizing the population there. Never faced the Syrian Arab army directly, never faced the Russian military directly, not in any meaningful way. Never faced the Israeli or repelled any, as we can see, any Israeli attacks onto the country while he's in power. It's arguable that what you have here is a construct, and an absolute extension of Israeli and U.S. interest. And I would argue, and many others, cares very little about Syria and was groomed for this position. I mean, more and more it's becoming evident that this might be the case.
Yes. I just want to respond to Hassan asking how to contact me. If you could go to my personal X account, Kevork Almassian, there is a link in the bio, dubia.com/Kevork Almassian, and you can send me a message there and I will definitely reply to you, my friend. The other day I was basically talking about this exact case, and I compared Jolani with Eli Cohen in the 60s, who was a famous Israeli spy born in Egypt, infiltrated the power structures of the Syrian politics and military and security apparatuses. And I found something very interesting, Patrick, that he was doing something like Jeffrey Epstein. He was organizing parties in Damascus for the political elite and the security elite, and hosting them and extracting information from them under the impact of alcohol. Basically, we don't know if he had also other types of probably prostitutes or drugs. But back then, this was a very complicated operation from Mossad, and it took them for years to infiltrate, and they were successful. And the information they received from Eli Cohen back then was detrimental during the Six-Day War in 1967. Imagine this Eli Cohen went to the borders with Israel, and he asked the Syrian military to plant certain type of trees which could give a shadow to the Syrian military soldiers. And those trees were markers for Israel to bomb the fortifications and the bunkers during the Six-Day War. Now, Jolani's case is much more complicated. And he started in Iraq when basically the US needed to start a civil war, a sectarian war. And this is what Jolani basically did during his time in Iraq. He wasn't a resistance fighter. He was killing Shiites, basically, and sending car bombs to the Shia neighborhoods. So he served the American strategy there when they wanted to kill the resistance by starting a civil war in Iraq. And then he ended up in Bucha. It was a Bucha or Buka with Baghdadi. And coincidentally, they both live in 2011, right? And one forms IS and the other one forms Jabhat al-Nusra. Like, so many coincidences there. If you see his career until presidency, it's like sometimes when I think about it, I'm like, am I being too conspiracy theorist here, or there are some patterns that we can connect with each other, right? This guy is definitely a CIA asset, in my opinion, and he's definitely serving the Mossad now in Damascus. It's a very complicated operation, but it was successful operation, and they need him in Damascus. If they see Jolani as a threat against their interests, don't you think they can kill him? I mean, they dropped 84 tons of explosives to kill Nasrallah.
That's
How
right.
many tons? How many tons have they dropped over Jolani? Right? Zero.
Yeah, I've not heard anything, and not ideologically, not politically, anything that would challenge the Western hegemony or the Greater Israel Project or the Israeli regional hegemony. I've heard absolutely nothing. Only people that he derides in his government, quote unquote, derides are the enemies of Israel and the enemies of the United States. So, and the fact that they encountered no resistance with a relatively small force as they marched into Damascus in December of 2024, just a few months ago, and their unwillingness to defend any Syrian territory. He's not a serious military leader. He couldn't command any military force to defend the country, and in a civil war, he himself would be wiped out quite easily and quite quickly.
Yes.
So I think what the West would like to do with this character, as long as he is useful for them, is to manage him, and then the United States, Turkey, Israel will work to take care of and sculpt the civil war playing field in Syria. And then, you have the titular head in Damascus that is really just a figurehead, a symbol of something or other that will eventually reach its sell-by date.
Yeah.
Because he can't govern. You can't govern like this, especially in a country where people have had normal civil society, have had functioning administrations, and have had non-sectarian, somewhat harmonized society. They're going around while the Israelis are bombing Syria and bombing targets this week. Jolani's going around attacking Shiites in Shiite communities and running people out of the
Mosques.
Zainab Ali mausoleum. And so that's where their priorities are. It's ethnic cleansing. It's stoking sectarian strife, hatred, and Sunni supremacy as he sees it, as his worldview is. But that's exactly what Israel wants. They want to polarize Syria. They don't. United States and Israel, the biggest threat to them that Syria posed was a model of a multi-ethnic, multi-religious, secular Arab state. That the threat of that in the region, that's not dominated by sectarian division and not defined by polarity along sectarian lines. The threat of that is just too much for Israel to bear, too much for the United States to bear, because other countries might look at that success. And Syria had every opportunity to succeed, providing they were not under economic sanctions. And unfortunately, that wasn't to be after 2012. And so, but just the symbolism of that, and also, and I'll even say this is probably controversial for some people, but what the Syrian Baathism represented was very anti-imperialist.
Yes.
I mean, it was a hard shell to protect the country and its institutions from infiltration, and the fact that they're at war with their neighbor, Israel, which is kind of not a minor thing, and it's something that people overlook when you're kind of judging and evaluating, Syria as a state under Bashar Assad and his father Hafiz. You have to take all of these factors into consideration. And now you're really seeing, why we and others were warning that this would be the worst possible outcome. And it's actually Kevork 10 times worse than I could have possibly imagined.
Indeed, Patrick.
One thing to have the black flag flying over Damascus. It's another thing for the new occupying gang or whatever to basically open the gates and allow Israel just to roll in and take territory as a wish. Whatever they choose, whatever they want, they can have it. They could go all the way to Iraqi Kurdistan if they want to, theoretically, provide the United States allows it, and encircle Jordan, and then that's a security problem for Jordan. Well, it should be viewed as such, but it's crazy. So what about all these? All borders are sacrosanct. The whole reason for sanctioning Russia, for isolating Russia from the international community because they violated post World War II borders. I guess that doesn't apply here.
Yes.
Apparently not.
Yeah. One person says Assad killed millions. No, brother, he killed billions, not millions. I don't know where do people bring these numbers. It's like the opposition monitors say that the death toll is 500,000, and they say 1/3 of it are from the Syrian army soldiers. So if you think that 160,000 Syrian army soldiers died by peaceful banners, then I have a brand new vaccine to sell you, my friend.
And 100,000 foreign takfiri
Jihadists,
fighters.
yes.
They're counted in that 500,000 as well. And so it's the same mentality. The people who are saying that Assad killed millions, or Assad killed the butcher Assad killed 500,000 of some people. It's the same type of toxic logic that Israel uses to blame the deaths in Gaza on Hamas. They're saying we didn't want to kill them, but it's really Hamas's fault because they brought it upon themselves. And just like Bashar al-Assad supposedly brought this upon himself, like the death of his own army, Syrian Arab army, is really it's an atrocity committed by him for just being there as president. I mean, it's just insane. But we've lived with this for a long time.
In 2011, in the first few weeks when Syrian army soldiers were getting killed, I'm talking about the first 2 weeks, right? It's not like a few months later, because they say it started peaceful. But in the first 2 weeks when Syrian army soldiers were getting killed by gunshots and by knives, basically being slaughtered, the Al Jazeera back then, they used to peddle the following line. They used to say that the Syrian Mukhabarat, or the secret service, they're ordering the military to shoot on the protesters, and the military refuses to shoot on the peaceful protesters, so the secret intelligence are shooting the Syrian soldiers and killing them in the streets. And this is how they sold this narrative to the people. Al Jazeera has played a very, very dirty role in Syria. But you mentioned Al-Ba'ath. Yesterday, I was thinking about this exact case. Now that I see, now Druze want to govern themselves. They don't want to be part of Jolani's caliphate. Kurds are the same. I'm sure if the Christians were located in one governorate, they would also raise a similar slogan. And now the Alawites are also raising their voices. And they don't want to live under them. But I know myself that the problem was created by the US and Israel, this security threat against them, and now they are giving them the solution. So it's the problem, creating problem, and giving them the solution. But they don't have much of a choice. Like if you're someone living in, let's say, in Homs or Hama, in some of the minority towns, and they're coming after you, I understand you're under grave threat. But this was avoidable. And why I say it, because so if we go back a little bit in history, look, Syria was governed by or occupied by Turkey for 400 years. They had no political life. There was no democratic elections. There was basically subjugation, and people were second-class citizens. They were Arabs, and they were subjugated by Ottoman Turkey. Okay, for 400 years. Then comes the French. The French take the country, and they treat the country the same way Jolani is basically doing, which is these vertical lines in the country. You have Alawites, Jews, Sunnis, Christians. It's like there is no national identity, right? But then when Syria gained independence, there was an era of lots of instability, which over 9-10 coup d'etats happened in a matter of 10-20 years. Yep. Every few months, a coup d'etat, until Hafez al-Assad or the Ba'athists came to power in 1963, and in 1970, Hafez al-Assad did the last coup. And here I see that the Ba'athists managed to create a national identity to bring everyone together in a one-nation state. But this required a certain level of political authoritarianism to impose the formula on the people. So here, the political authoritarianism under Assad was this Jacobean force that this regime used on the society in order to keep it together, due to also all these historical factors that precedes the Ba'ath rule 400 years, 450 years. Now that Ba'ath has gone, this has been proven to be true. Syria cannot be governed by a gang like Jolani, who represents a strict one sect, right? Like, it's not even sect. Like, because Takfiris are not even sect, it's an ideology.
Yes.
Like, the Sunnis may accept his rule because, let's say, there is no direct persecution against them. Everybody wants to do business, but he doesn't even represent the Sunnis in this case. He is even changing the Ministry of Endowment, which is the ministry responsible for the religious affairs, and he's kicking out all the Sunni, Sufi imams and clerics in the ministry and in the mosques, and appointing Salafists and Takfiris, which means even the Islamic nature of Syria, which was a very moderate and Sufi and spiritual, is being changed by Jolani as well. So here I come and argue, yes, there was political authoritarianism in Syria, but there were reasons for it to keep this country together. And now that this regime is gone, see what's happening? Everybody is talking like there is no longer there is no one talking about Syria or being a Syrian. I see the Alawites like, oh, I'm an Alawite. Christians, I'm a Christian. Armenian is an Armenian. Druze is a Druze. Kurd is a Kurd. There is no national identity any longer.
Yep, that's it. You've hit the nail on the head, Kevork. That's the takeaway. That's the result of this process that's taken place now over the last couple of months, but really just gradually the erosion and degradation and weakening of the Syrian state through sanctions, through external pressure. The irony is it's not the irony. This was by design. The West putting incredible maximum pressure on Syria for years, and at the same time demanding reforms,
Yes.
demanding political reforms. Now, I will argue, like if you look at history, whenever you have external pressure placed on a country, either by war, by sanctions, or the threat of annihilation, it normally hardens the interior, politically, the interior of that country. And then that becomes the sort of the ruling paradigm while it's under pressure. When the pressure releases from the outside and the economy normalizes, and then all of a sudden you see a loosening of the calcification of the political system loosens up, becomes slightly more liberalized, more internationalized. And Syria was never allowed to have that happen. They did have a brief period of what looked like prosperity during the 2000s, where the future looked very hopeful. Of course, you can comment on this. I'm talking about 2007, 8, 9, 10, really right before the instability. And Syria all of a sudden was attracting great attention from European retailers for textiles in Aleppo and
Yes.
all these other industries. And of course, that upset Turkey. That's definitely, I think, a motivating factor for Turkey to dismantle Syria's industrial sector in Aleppo, which they did very quickly with the help of the Free Syrian Army and ISIS during 2012, 2013.
Indeed.
But were they not at war with Israel and not under 24-hour, a state of emergency? Because that's the reality of life in Syria, bordering Israel. And had they not been under sanctions, and had the United States not, and the British and the French to some degree, not trying to overthrow the government constantly, you would have seen a much more prosperous, probably more socialist leaning, but still
Yes.
somewhat liberal Syrian government, state, and economy. And then, then what happens after that? Well, same thing could happen in Iraq. Same thing could happen in Yemen. Same thing can happen around the Middle East. And then that's the Middle East that the U.S. is on record. Dwight D. Eisenhower, if you look at communiques, cables, statements from the late 1950s, the 1960s, what was most concerning for the United States during the Cold War was not, number one, was not Soviet influence in places like Syria. It was Arab nationalism.
Yes.
Arab nationalism. In fact, and which is ironic because the Arab national identity was something that the British sought to promote and create because of their European rivalry with Germany before and during the First World War. And that they saw Arab nationalism as something that could weaken the Ottoman Empire, the last bastion, Turkey, modern Turkey of the Ottoman Empire. And then use that to basically break down Turkey and then weaken Germany in the process. So this is European rivalries shaping the present and future of the Middle East, and then the creation of the State of Israel. That's another nationalist project, Jewish nationalism or Zionism, and the list goes on. So yeah, you really have to feel so. The tragedy of the region is so much down to moves and things that were enacted by European imperial powers in the late 19th century, in the early 20th century. And I'm not letting the Ottoman Empire off the hook. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because life was not a box of candy during Ottoman rule for Arabs. They were regarded as, in many cases, a second tier of the Ottoman rule. So so there's some good things that come from Arab nationalism, but the way the borders were drawn by Sykes and Picot, it embedded all sorts of problems, and then all just the dirty dealing, and then the creation of the State of Israel just guaranteed the permanent destabilization of the region in perpetuity. So it's an interesting story, but a sad one.
Yeah, I will show you a photo from yesterday. Jolani organized a national dialogue in Damascus. And credit to him, he invited the Christian representatives, as you can see in the first row here, in the upper photo, but he didn't allow them to wear the crosses. Interesting, right? And in the bottom photo is Assad with the same people, basically. Everybody is wearing its cross. What happened to the crosses here? I thought we are now in a diversity-friendly regime. What?
If they wore, I'm making a joke, of course. I hope people see my black humor, Kevork. If they wore Stars of David around their neck, I'm sure Jolani wouldn't have had any problem whatsoever. So, am I wrong?
Oh my God, Patrick! No, you're not wrong.
Just thought I'd say, you know what I mean?
Oh my God! This is really good. I didn't expect it. Oh man! Like we were discussing all these tragic things, but it's so tragic that sometimes I sit here, like my body starts doing reaction from instant and start laughing about it, because it's so dramatic and it was so expected and anticipated that everything that is happening now, you were able to see it and foresee it. It was so clear what is going to happen. But those were called Assad talking points. I will just show you last map. This is being circulated now on social media platforms. So this is what Israel is envisioning for Syria, right? The Golan, from the Golan Heights, they would capture in Al-Qunaytira, they would open with Sweda. I don't know how practical is this to open a joint truce with the Kurdish side corridor here, but since the Americans are stationed here in Al-Taf border crossing, you would ask yourself the question, why were they stationed there for quite a long time? This could be the reason. And then Damascus and the north are all demilitarized zone, and then you have a, some sort of a caliphate there. The Alawites would be in the coastal side, probably with the Christians, and then you have a big Kurdistan. I think this is the end of Syria, and I'm being very pessimistic. I don't know, maybe I'm thinking too much about it, maybe because it's my country, but when I see all these developments and what Israel is doing and capable of doing, and they will do it in the near future, this is a bigger defeat for Syria than the Six-Day War in 1967. Syria is being like completely torn apart. For me, this is a strategic defeat for Syria.
Yeah, and people don't realize the historic gravity of it. You've got the Six-Day War, you've got Yom Kippur. Those are regarded as sort of watershed moments in modern Middle East history. And then, but the borders remained somewhat stable. Obviously, the addition of Iraqi Kurdistan created by the Americans through their no-fly zones in the first Gulf War and second Gulf War. But aside from that, more or less the same. But this is a radical change in the borders and the geographical makeup of the region. And I really am sad to say that if it's broken up, the likelihood of Syria ever being reunited or united under a single flag is going to be something very difficult.
It will take decades. It will take decades, for sure.
if at all. But what we do see is we see a new military corridors and paths have been cut through Syria, and with the target being Iran. And it's just hard to avoid that conclusion when you're looking at some of these maps. And it's really down to a question of money and how much you can pay small, disparate ethnic groups and religious demographics and small interest groups. You can pay them, if you can break up the country, pay them all off. They did this to Ethiopia. Look at the Horn of Africa, how it's changed in the last 30 years, 20 years. They've partitioned Sudan. They've added Eritrea, Djibouti. They're working on Somalia, partitioning or breaking up Somalia into 2 or 3 countries. And so it completely transformed. So all the big, strong African nation states are smaller, dysfunctional, infighting ridden, basket cases. And Libya, obviously, look at Libya. So this can be done. It has been done. It's just the unthinkable that it would happen to Syria, right in the heart of the region. It was just something that is very hard to comprehend before. And to see it happening, it's, tragic.
Oh, before we move to Ukraine, guys, the X account of Patrick is in the description below. And I will also ask him about an article that he published, I believe, today, titled "Easier Said Than Done, Germany's Attempt to Achieve Independence from the US." I will drop the link now in the live chat, so you guys can also check this article, which is about Germany's attempts to pursue more autonomous policy from the US, which is something that has been discussed a lot nowadays in Europe. France and Germany, they're all talking about distancing themselves or pursuing more autonomous relationship. You can find the link now in the live chat. Patrick, Kiev has agreed terms with Washington on a minerals deal that Ukrainian officials hope will improve relations with the Trump administration and pave the way for a long-term U.S. security commitment. Ukrainian officials said Kiev was ready to sign the agreement on jointly developing its mineral resources, including oil and gas, after the U.S. dropped demand for a right to $500 billion in potential revenue from the deal. The Ukrainian government is set to give its formal approval to the deal on Wednesday, which was today, and Trump says that the Ukrainians have agreed. I will just show you the video of Trump saying this. Let's see if we can do this like this. I'm trying to make the video look more, let me see, probably like this. No. Anyways, I will show the video of Trump.
With Ukraine and this mineral deal, what does Ukraine get in return, Mr. President?
$350 billion and lots of equipment, military equipment, and the right to fight on, and originally the right to fight. Look, Ukraine, I will say they're very brave and they're good soldiers, but without the United States and its money and its military equipment, this war would have been over in a very short period of time. In fact, I was the one that gave the javelins. You remember the famous javelins? That was me. That wasn't Obama. It wasn't Biden. It wasn't anybody else. It was me. And they wiped out a lot of tanks with those javelins. And the expression was that Obama gave sheets and I gave the javelins. That was a big deal at the time. It wiped out. That was the beginning when people said, wow, that's something. Well, that was American equipment. Without American equipment, this war would have been over very quickly. And American money, too. I mean, a lot of money.
So yeah.
He keeps blaming Biden for starting the war, but then he's bragging about the weapons that he sent.
If it wasn't for me, this war would have never happened. And
Yeah.
then boasting there that he's the one that provided lethal aid that Obama wouldn't provide. I mean, Trump's constantly, contradicting himself. This is like a feature. This is a feature, not a bug of Trump. So the bug is when he's actually talking sense and he's coherent. But in Trump's special way, he unveils the truth of the situation. He unveils the hypocrisy, even if it's unintended. Yet he does, and this is the magic of Trump, as we called it in 2016, the magic of Trump. So the bull in the china shop. And the problem with Trump is you don't know, he could pivot off this by Friday and then pivot back on Monday. So this is what Steve Bannon calls flood the zone, Bannon, which is flood the zone, flood the information zone, keep the media on their back heels, keep the opposition off balance and on their back heels, and any counterparties, and nobody knows, and they're just waiting to see what you're going to say next. It induces a kind of despondency. So Trump is a master at the media, and with such a mandate, he's really able to maximize this flood the zone strategy. But what's interesting about this, Kevork, you notice the figure he said. So what's Ukraine going to get out of it? Well, 350 billion. 350 billion. That's an interesting figure. Why 350 billion? Well, that's interesting. They're not going to be able to extract the profits of rare earths in any time soon, maybe in the next decade. So where's that money come from? That's the same amount of money of Russian frozen assets that are held in Euroclear, in escrow, let's say right now.
Yeah.
And so when he's talking, so again, Trump's letting out little clues. So he believes that he probably has a deal where he's going to take the Russian frozen funds, use them for, quote, reconstruction, and to provide aid to Ukraine. Russia will perhaps look the other way, and then in return, Russia gets something they want, which is they're going to be able to, keep all the new regions. And what the other thing about this deal, which is interesting, is Trump says, well, it's going to allow them to fight on. Well, fight on. That means that status quo continues. And if you look at the battle map in Ukraine, the status quo shows steady progress by the Russians. So am I getting this wrong here? But just by what Trump said, Russia's paying for Odessa. They're paying for Kharkiv and everything up to the Dnieper River for $350 billion. Now, that's an interesting figure, right? Because after the First World War, German reparations after the Treaty of Versailles was $6.6 billion. If you calculate inflation to 2025, that comes out to $350 billion.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Exactly. So just think of the proportion of that amount of money and what it signifies historically in terms of reparations. It's not that far off of post-war settlements in the past. So I find that to be somewhat interesting when we're looking at this scenario.
Yeah. We had elections here in Germany, and I promised myself not to comment myself about the elections since there are so many eyes and ears are watching these streams, and since I live here, they're like, let's see if he is going to say something wrong, so we come after him again, and I'm not going to comment on this. It seems, however, that most of the German people voted for the same political parties, right? The same that who governed Germany since the end of World War II, CDU, SPD. We have Greens, we have the Free Democratic Union. I was shocked to see that the so-called left-wing party, which is Die Linke, got so much more votes than Sarah Wagenknecht's party, the Sarah Wagenknecht coalition. I mean, if you're not really indoctrinated and you see these two options in front of you, and if you're a left-wing, how would you elect the Linke and not Sarah? Like, Sarah was a solid candidate for becoming a very strong opposition in the parliament. It was mind-boggling for me. So what's your take on Sarah's party, and what do you think about the AfD? Are they able to change course in Germany, because they look more like the Trump version of Germany?
They do. The AfD is kind of like I think they were actually much more radical before. They've actually gone through a kind of mainstreaming process where they purged all the kind of quote anti-Semitic elements out of the party, and they have a lesbian leader. So it's just that kind of trend of the alt-light, not the alt-right, the alt-light. And so they're coming more mainstream. They're only radical in the sense of in relation to the other parties. But what's interesting is that the late surge in left-wing support and also in CDU support, I will hypothesize that this was a result of Elon Musk's meddling in the German electoral process, and that really mobilized a lot of support for people other than the AfD. The AfD have already had their Elon Musk didn't bring very many new people by all his interference, showing up at the rally, dangling money in front of the party, dominating the media space. What it did do is probably mobilize a lot of opposition to AfD. So
Yes.
it kind of backfired. So that was Elon Musk tweeted out, the future of humanity or the world is in the hands of this German election before. and then the results come and he doesn't even talk about it. I mean, this guy is a complete fake, politically speaking. He's an absolute opportunist. And this was his big sort of piece de la resistance. He felt, oh, I just won the MAGA. I just put Trump in the White House, which he didn't. Trump was already trouncing Biden in the polls long before Harris or Musk came onto the scene in that election. But he really put a lot behind this German election, and didn't win. AfD did their best result ever, so they were successful. But this goes to show you that what seems like a good idea at the time might actually, can in politics backfire on you. And what's interesting about the CDU and Frederick Merz is one of the ways they got support was by aping some of the AfD talking points and policies regarding immigration. And that's very easily done in politics, because this is what Labour and the Tories have done to the Liberal Democrats in the United Kingdom. They made them disappear by co-opting them. Even in a power sharing arrangement, as the Conservatives did when David Cameron came to power in 2010 by forming an unlikely coalition with the Liberal Democrats, who were surging to challenge as the number 2 party in the country, by making that one move, by going into coalition, giving them a deputy prime minister position. They basically eviscerated the Liberal Democrats, and the establishment got its 2-party duopoly back.
Yes.
And so that can happen in Germany and in any other country. That's politics.
Yeah. I would like also just add one thing before I ask your last question. Elon Musk also paid. I'm 100% sure about it. This is just my conviction based on connecting patterns and seeing some content on X. Elon Musk paid a lot of journalists and activists in Germany in the past year. And he basically incentivized them to support AfD. He dropped lots of money. And these people were consistently talking in English about the importance of supporting AfD. And when you see these few figures, which I have like 10 names in my mind, and you see, and all of them are German, you see that they are publishing same content with different ways. Like one is a video, the other one is just written, the others are leaving comments, but they're the keywords that they use. And it was so easy for me to see that Elon Musk, when he amplifies these accounts, like you don't need to be a genius, you need to go to Elon Musk's own profile and see who is he amplifying basically, and why he's amplifying these people. Who are these people? Why Elon Musk chooses A and B and not C? But consistently he's pushing these accounts, right? So I think AfD doubling its score is a huge for Germany, but I don't think that the CDU will collaborate or cooperate with the AfD to form a government. They will go with the SPD and the Greens again, so which means it's same, because the Greens and the SPDs are not going to allow Merz to change his policies towards immigration or the open door policies. And look, I'm a migrant in Germany. but I'm also sovereignist, you know, like
Right.
I don't want my country Syria for people from Tajikistan and Uzbekistan to come and with tens of thousands, and like with Jolani at the current moment, the same way. Many people in Germany do not want to open their borders completely. Like if there is a serious case of a war and there are refugees coming from a war zone, that's fine. But then you see that it has become like a trend, you know, everybody wants to come because it's an open border. So in this case, I think it's going to stay the same, and this will lead for the emboldenment of the AfD, because the people will see that the CDU will not deliver them what they want. And the people want change in the country, economically and in terms of the migration crisis. So this will allow the AfD in the next elections, and probably in early elections, to win. So this is just my, I'm foreseeing the future, but when the AfD comes, it will come in the worst time for Germany, because we're obviously heading to the wall in Germany. There is no strategy for the energy crisis. We don't know how Germany will secure the energy needs for the factories and for us. And it's so expensive, you know, like it's unbearable, and it will get worse because they are doubling down with Russia. They don't want to reconcile with Russia, so they don't have so much option in this. And you publish an article in the 21st century. Easier said than done. I would just screen this for
Yeah,
the people.
that's mainly Andrew Karibko's. A big chunk of that is from Andrew Karibko. If you scroll down,
Yeah.
who got his great Substack, which we link to as well. But that's the question. Easier said than done. Can Germany achieve independence from the United States? And Andrew rightly points out, you have the small issue of military occupation in Germany, which is not
Very small. Very
yeah,
small.
yeah, and it's not an easy thing to extricate yourself from Uncle Sam when he's embedded in your country for 80 years. And so that's one of them. The other thing is economic independence.
Yes.
And if your number one LNG supplier is the United States, which is 4,000 miles away, and you're not buying cheaper, more reliable, and affordable gas from your next door neighbor, which is effectively Russia, and the economic implications of that are the energy's rising, industry's leaving Germany, industry's going to America. So
Yes.
America has taken the market. They bailed out the fracking industry that was struggling in America. They're taking brain draining German management, engineering, and corporate systems through BASF and other companies like that. China is also benefiting as well. Germans are globalists. They will the survival of the corporation is paramount, and whatever it takes to stay profitable. And they're very good at industry, German, but they're not going to pay over the odds for energy because of this European Union, NATO enforced economic policy, and that's the independence issue. Now, politically, Frederick Merz and the new government, all they have to do is modulate the immigration issue slightly. But if they don't improve economically, the AfD will continue to surge, as you said. However, if they're able to do something radical, which is open up relations with Russia, or wanting to break sanctions with Russia on oil and gas specifically, that will definitely be good for their economic fortunes, but bad politically, because that's going to certainly rub Poland the wrong way. And the United States is constantly playing Poland against Germany.
Yes.
They want Poland to become the new sort of favorite European partner, you know, the new checkpoint Charlie for Washington. And so they're pumping military bases, support, money into the Polish economic system. Germany's kind of like old hat now for the United States as the line of pressure has moved further eastward. And also with the militarization of Scandinavia, that's also turned the Baltic Sea into a NATO lake. And so Germany can still buck all these trends. And Merz is actually the best positioned person to do it because he has spent more time in America. He's the most Americanized German leader probably ever. And so he can probably do business with a Trump administration or a Vance administration later, certainly. The question is, he's going to have to abandon and kind of moderate some of his more hawkish positions that he has, especially on Ukraine, and he's very hawkish in favor of Israel
Yes.
as well. That's another conversation. But so Germany's right in the middle, and as Andrew Kribko said, this is between a German-dominated Europe or a multipolar Europe. And we all know where a multipolar Europe ends up historically, which is in a scrap heap of conflict and double dealing and petty rivalries. So, I think this is a big crisis for Brussels. It's also a big crisis for NATO, because if the United States does pull out of Germany, that's the end of NATO,
Yes.
right? A European-led NATO is not going to be a factor at all. Then they're going to move to European military integration, which is a product that they had already started that was really becoming formalized in 2018-19. And then, as if by magic, COVID happened. And then right after COVID dissipated, the Ukraine war happened. So that whole European military integration project, which would give Europe and its member states more autonomy foreign policy wise away from Washington, was totally derailed. And let the conspiracy theorists speculate whether that was by design.
Guys, this is the website 21st Century Wire. It is on the screen. You can visit and read the articles on the website. And after this stream, usually Patrick also publishes what we have spoken in this stream as an article also on the website. You can also find many other interesting opinion articles, investigations. You can check them. And Patrick's personal X account is in the description below. And he's also publishing the work that he does on his personal X account. Patrick, it was a great discussion with you today. I really enjoyed it and also had fun. And I will not forget your joke tonight. I will tell this joke to my wife as well when she comes back. And I will post that as a segment on X once we finish this conversation. That would
maybe
be funny.
Someone should make a meme of that. Someone should make a meme. You can go ahead and make a meme of that. Just put the bling, get the Zionist bling around the poor Christian priests that are forced to sit in that conclave. Anyway.
Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's live streaming. I appreciate you all. I will definitely do a live streaming tomorrow on Thursday, 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. If you like this content, hit the like button, subscribe to this YouTube channel. 50% of you are not subscribers, but watching this. Just check, just in case. And if you like to support this independent work, you can become a patron, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis, or there are other means in the description below. And I will see you soon tomorrow. Peace be upon you, upon your families, and peace be upon you, Patrick.